For 8 long years, the Empire believed Princess Kaela was dead, lost in a brutal rebel ambush during the final days of the human-alien war. The pain of her death consumed Queen Arlyne, who ruled with a cold, unfeeling heart ever since, her grief hidden beneath a mask of duty. The galaxy had moved on, but the Queen's sorrow never left her. Then, one stormy morning, everything changed. As the palace gates creaked open, 2 figures stepped into the courtyard. An alien woman with a scar above her right eye, identical to the one Princess Kaela had carried since childhood, and a human warrior beside her. He wore worn Terran armor, but his stance was sure, his eyes alert, as if prepared for anything. The guards froze in shock, weapons at the ready, but neither moved. The palace's security systems went wild, alarms blaring and lights flashing. Word quickly reached the Queen, who was summoned to the throne chamber. As her footsteps echoed in the empty halls, she felt a strange twist in her gut. Could it be? Was it possible? When she entered the chamber, there they stood. The woman, her daughter, alive. And standing beside her, the human soldier who had somehow brought her back. The Queen's heart raced. Was this a dream or a cruel trick? The truth stood before her, impossible and undeniable. Queen Arlyne stood frozen at the entrance of the throne chamber, her breath caught in her chest. The woman before her, the one with the scar so unmistakably like her own daughter's, was no ghost. She was real, alive. And the human beside her, he seemed out of place, an enemy in a kingdom of aliens, but there was no mistaking the connection between them. The girl's eyes, though older, still held the softness of Kaela's childhood innocence. "Your Majesty," the woman said, her voice trembling but firm, "I am Princess Kaela." The words hit like a wave crashing against a cliff. Queen Arlyne's knees buckled, and she gripped the nearest column for support. She could barely breathe, barely think. How could this be possible? Kaela had been gone. She had seen the reports, the bodies. This woman, her daughter, was supposed to be dead. The human warrior, silent until now, stepped forward. His presence was powerful, like a force she could not ignore. "We've been through hell to get here," he said, his voice low but steady. "She's not the same girl you remember, but she's still your princess. She needs you." Arlyne's eyes darted between the two, her heart racing with questions and doubts. How was all she could whisper. How had her daughter survived? How had this human come to stand beside her? And why had Kaela waited so long to return? The silence in the room was thick, broken only by the hum of the palace's distant systems. Princess Kaela took a step forward, her eyes meeting her mother's. "I didn't choose to come back, but the galaxy needs us, Mother. The war isn't over." The words hung in the air, heavy and unsettling. Queen Arlyne felt her pulse quicken. The war was supposed to be over. The treaties had been signed. The peace talks had begun. But the look in her daughter's eyes, the same eyes that once held innocence and joy, now burned with something darker, something she could not ignore. "What do you mean, the war isn't over?" the Queen finally managed to ask, her voice trembling with a mixture of disbelief and fear. She had ruled for years under the assumption that the galaxy was healing, that the last remnants of conflict were being erased. But Kaela's words shattered that illusion. The human soldier, Daniel, spoke up again, his voice as calm as ever, despite the weight of the situation. "There's a new threat, a faction of rebels, but they're not just fighting for power. They're hunting for something much worse. They've found something ancient, something dangerous, and they want to use it to destroy everything we've built." Queen Arlyne's mind raced. Could this be true? Had they truly fought for so long only to face a darker force? Her gaze shifted to Kaela, the girl who had been a symbol of hope, the one who had rallied the Empire to fight, now standing before her, a warrior herself, with a human at her side. The alien princess had always been fierce, but now something about her was different. She seemed hardened, changed. And that scar on her face wasn't just a reminder of battle. It was a mark of survival, of a long, brutal journey. Kaela stepped closer to the throne, her eyes locked onto her mother's. "I've seen things, Mother, terrible things, and I've come to tell you that we need to prepare. The real enemy is out there, and it's closer than we think." The queen felt a chill spread through her, deep in her bones. The peaceful empire she had fought so hard to maintain was on the verge of collapse, and her daughter, the daughter she had thought was lost, was now the key to saving it. The tension in the throne room was palpable as the door slammed shut, echoing through the ancient stone halls. Queen Arlyne's heart raced, her thoughts scattered. They were not alone anymore. The palace security systems buzzed erratically, and the distant sound of boots on the marble floors told her that their time was running out. She had to act fast, but how could she trust what Kaela was saying? Could the war truly be starting again, this time with an enemy far worse than the rebels they had already fought? The narrow passageways beneath the palace were cold, damp, and filled with an eerie silence that seemed to mirror the queen's growing unease. The walls, once a symbol of security and tradition, now felt like they were closing in on her. Every step she took echoed in the stillness, amplifying the anxiety that gripped her chest. Kaela led the way, her movements fluid and determined, with Daniel close behind, his hand on his weapon, always alert. "This way," Kaela whispered, her voice cutting through the darkness. The glow from her device was their only light, flickering as they moved deeper into the forgotten tunnels. The queen wanted to ask more questions, to demand answers, but there was no time. Every second they spent down here, they risked being caught. By the rebels, by their own people, or by something worse. Kaela had barely said a word since they left the throne room, but the tension in her posture was enough to tell the queen that something was weighing heavily on her. Something beyond the weapon, beyond the immediate threat. Arlyne's mind wandered back to the war, to the years of loss and betrayal. Kaela had been her greatest loss, and now she stood before her, an entirely different person. Stronger, but also scared in ways Arlyne couldn't fully understand. "Tell me what's really going on," the queen said, her voice strained as she caught up to her daughter. "Why didn't you come back sooner? Why hide for so long?" Kaela stopped and turned to face her, her eyes filled with a deep, unspoken pain. "I didn't have a choice, Mother. After I escaped the rebels, I had to survive. I couldn't risk being hunted again, not while they were still out there looking for me. For us." The weight of Kaela's words sank into the queen's chest. She had never considered how much her daughter had suffered in those years of presumed death. It wasn't just the war that had torn them apart. It was the silence, the abandonment. And now, here they were, fighting together against an enemy they barely understood. Ahead of them, Daniel signaled for them to stop. The air grew thick with tension, and the queen felt her pulse quicken. She could hear footsteps echoing in the distance, the unmistakable sound of someone approaching. It was impossible to know whether they were allies or enemies, but their presence meant trouble. Kaela's voice was barely above a whisper. "We're close. The weapon is in a vault deep under the palace, where no one's been for years. But we won't be able to reach it if we don't get past whatever's waiting ahead." Arlyne's heart pounded in her chest. There was no turning back now. Every choice she made, every step she took, would determine whether the galaxy lived or died. The tension was unbearable, and the feeling of imminent danger hung over them like a dark cloud. They pressed forward, the sound of their footsteps blending with the distant echo of something or someone, moving closer. Whatever awaited them at the end of this path, they would face it together. And Arlyne had to believe that, in the end, it would be enough. "We need to move," Kaela said, her voice low but urgent. Her eyes never left the glowing device on her belt, which pulsed faster as if responding to the danger closing in on them. Daniel stood by her side, his eyes scanning the room, ever alert. "They know you're here," he said, his tone grim. "We've got less than 10 minutes before the palace is swarming with enemies. We have to get to the underground tunnels and find the ancient weapon before they do." The queen's mind raced. The tunnels beneath the palace were forbidden, sealed off after the war ended. But if what Kaela and Daniel said was true, there was no time to waste. If this weapon exists, why didn't we know about it? Why did you hide it? She demanded, her eyes fixed on Kaela. I didn't hide it, Kaela replied sharply. I didn't even know about it until recently. The rebels found ancient maps, but this isn't just about revenge. This weapon can change everything. We've seen it. It's a force beyond anything you can imagine. As if to punctuate her words, a loud bang sounded at the entrance. The guards were outside, but they wouldn't hesitate to follow orders, even if it meant firing on the queen's own daughter. Kaela's eyes locked with her mother's, a mix of pain and urgency in them. We have to go now, Mother. If we don't reach the weapon before the rebels do, it's over for all of us. Without waiting for a response, Kaela turned to Daniel. He nodded, signaling to the hidden passageway at the back of the room. The queen hesitated for only a moment, then followed them. As she moved through the shadows with Kaela and Daniel, every step felt heavier than the last, weighed down by the uncertainty of everything she thought she knew. The palace they had once called home now felt like a prison, its walls closing in as the world outside began to shift. But there was no turning back now. The fate of the galaxy rested on what they would find below, beneath the very foundations of the empire that had once seemed so unshakable. The air grew colder as they pressed deeper into the tunnels, the walls narrowing until it felt as though they were walking through the very bones of the palace itself. The echoes of their footsteps grew louder, more pronounced, as if the ancient stone was trying to warn them of something waiting ahead. Queen Arlyne could feel the weight of her thoughts, but there was no time to dwell. Every instinct screamed at her to hurry, to push forward. But with each step, the feeling of something lurking in the shadows grew stronger. Daniel moved ahead of them, his sharp eyes scanning the darkness, his hand never leaving the weapon at his side. Kaela's presence was a steady force beside her, but even she seemed tense, her hand resting on the glowing device strapped to her waist. Almost there, Kaela said, her voice barely audible, as though the air itself was thick with danger. The vault should be just ahead. Once we get inside, we'll have access to everything. The weapon, the plans, everything we need to stop them. The queen nodded, trying to calm the rising storm inside her. The weapon they sought could be the key to ending the war once and for all, but she could feel the weight of the galaxy pressing down on them. If it fell into the wrong hands, everything would be lost. They had no choice but to succeed. Then the sound came, a faint scraping, like the movement of metal against stone. Arlyne's heart skipped a beat. She wasn't alone. They weren't alone. Her eyes shot to Kaela and Daniel, but before any of them could speak, the distant sound of approaching footsteps echoed through the tunnel. They're here, Daniel said, his voice low and urgent. We need to move now. Kaela moved swiftly, pulling her mother along, her pace quickening as they neared the vault. But just as they rounded the final corner, a figure appeared in the darkness ahead. A tall, cloaked figure, their silhouette barely visible in the faint glow from Kaela's device. The figure's presence sent a chill down Arlyne's spine, and she instinctively reached for the weapon at her side. The figure didn't move, but its eyes gleamed from beneath the hood, a faint, unnatural glow. And then, a voice, deep, chilling, and familiar, broke the silence. You thought you could hide it from us, the figure said, its voice resonating through the stone like an ancient warning. The weapon belongs to us now, and you will never stop it. Kaela stepped forward, her jaw set in determination. I won't let you take it. I will protect this empire, no matter the cost. The figure tilted its head, as if studying her. Then prepare yourself, Princess. This is where the real war begins. With a single, swift movement, the figure disappeared into the shadows, leaving only the faintest trace of their presence. Arlyne's breath caught in her throat. The danger was real, and it was closing in faster than they could prepare for. Kaela looked at her mother, her eyes hard and unyielding. "They're after the weapon, Mother, and they won't stop until they have it. We have to be ready." The Queen nodded, her mind racing. The future of the galaxy hung in the balance. With her daughter by her side, and a human warrior whose loyalty she could no longer question, she would face whatever came next. There was no turning back now. The war, as Kaela had warned, wasn't over. It was only just beginning.